What is in this water? What did you do? My whole body is green. Do you have any idea who I am? You did this on purpose. This is assault. This is completely deliberate. I will drag you through every single court in Clark County, and I will make sure you lose absolutely everything. Your house, your pool, and everything you own. We won't talk about court. Let's talk about the city. HOA President Sylvia Vance of Oasis Ridge Estates had a very simple system. Find a resident who would not fight back, push until they folded, and move on. What she did not account for was homeowner Julian Brooks. He noticed the signs that someone had been in his private pool, installed cameras, watched the footage, and sat with what he knew for 2 full weeks. He wanted to make absolutely sure the case was airtight before he made his move. When he finally confronted her, she arrogantly told him his pool fell under HOA jurisdiction and that she would lien his property. She threatened to make his life in that neighborhood impossible. What she didn't know was that Julian had crystal clear footage of every single unauthorized visit she had made to his property. He also had a pool chemical receipt dated 3 days before her last unauthorized swim, a driveway full of neighbors who heard her threat, and an attorney already waiting for her name. Before we go further, what city or country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. We absolutely love seeing exactly where you are tuning in from. If you believe that what is yours, and no HOA president with a spare afternoon gets to decide otherwise, hit that like and subscribe button and come join us right here on Karen Unhinged. Oasis Ridge Estates sits right off Canyon Peak Boulevard in Summerlin, Nevada. It has 61 single-family homes, beautiful terracotta rooftops, and immaculate desert landscaping. The HOA collected $3,600 per household annually, but had not published a full financial statement since 2021. The community had one shared pool near the clubhouse on Sahara Court, available to all residents. That shared pool was not the one this story is about. Julian Brooks, 43, owned the beautiful house at 4218 Mirage Canyon Way. It was a 4-bedroom property he had purchased 4 years earlier. It came with something most homes in Oasis Ridge Estates did not have: a private pool. It was fully enclosed within a 6-foot block wall fence running the entire perimeter of his backyard. It was only accessible through a single heavy iron gate on the south side of the property that latched from the inside. The pool belonged to Julian the exact same way his kitchen and his living room belonged to him. It was on his deed perfectly within his property lines, and had absolutely nothing to do with the HOA, the shared amenities, or anyone else living on Canyon Peak Boulevard. Julian worked as a regional operations manager for a logistics company based out of the Las Vegas Business Center. This meant he traveled regularly, sometimes 2 or 3 days a week. The house sat empty on those occasions. He was not a man who ever looked for problems. He maintained his property well, paid his HOA dues on time, and largely kept to himself. His only exception was a standing Saturday morning coffee routine with his neighbor Helen Carmichael at Quilla 2222. She was a retired school teacher in her early 60s who had lived in Oasis Ridge Estates for years. She had watched Sylvia Vance operate from incredibly close range for 5 long years. The first sign that something was off came on a Tuesday evening in late October, when Julian returned from a 2-day work trip. He walked into his backyard to find a pool chair sitting at a very different angle than he had left it. He stood there for a moment, told himself he must have moved it and forgotten, and went back inside. The second sign came the following week. There was a faint waterline mark on the pool steps that was much higher than it should have been. There was also a single long blonde hair caught in the skimmer. Julian absolutely did not have blonde hair. He stood at the edge of the pool for a long time, staring at that skimmer. Then he immediately went inside and ordered 2 high-definition security cameras. He installed them on a Thursday. One covered the pool gate from above, and one covered the full width of the backyard from the corner of the house. Both connected seamlessly to his smartphone. Both cameras were recording continuously. He left for Phoenix on a Friday morning for a client meeting and checked the footage that evening from his quiet hotel room. He watched the footage twice. Then he put his phone down on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed for a while. He knew exactly who it was. He had recognized her immediately, but he did not call anyone that night. He did not confront anyone. He simply saved the footage to a second secure location, went to sleep, and began the quiet, deliberate process of building a bulletproof legal case. It was a case that Sylvia Vance would spend a very long time wishing he had never started. Julian came home from Phoenix on Saturday morning, made coffee, and sat at his kitchen table with his phone. He watched the clear footage 3 more times, not because he doubted what he saw, but because he wanted every single detail locked safely in his memory before he did anything with it. Sylvia Vance, the HOA president of Oasis Ridge Estates, had walked right through his private pool gate at 1:47 p.m. on Friday afternoon. She was carrying a bag and set herself up comfortably in his pool chair. She had gotten into his pool, spent 1 hour and 23 minutes there, and walked back out through the gate like she had just finished a simple errand. She had not knocked or called. She had not left a note. She had simply shown up, used his property, and left. And based on that single blonde hair in the skimmer and the moved pool chair from 2 weeks earlier, this was clearly not her first time. Julian did not go to Sylvia's house that morning. He went next door to Helen Carmichael's house instead. Helen opened the door, took one look at his serious face, and immediately asked, "What did she do?" Julian showed her the camera footage on his phone without saying a single word. Helen watched it, handed the phone back, and told him something that stopped him completely cold. She had seen Sylvia's car parked right in front of his house on at least 4 separate occasions when she knew Julian was out of town. She had assumed Sylvia was doing a formal property inspection. Julian calmly asked her if she would be willing to put that exact statement in writing. Helen said, "Absolutely," went inside, and came back 10 minutes later with a handwritten, signed, and dated statement. Julian spent the next 2 weeks doing absolutely nothing visible. On the outside, everything looked perfectly normal. He went to work, came home, waved at neighbors, and paid no special attention to Sylvia. But every time he left the house, he carefully checked the cameras remotely from his phone. Sylvia came back twice more during those 2 weeks. It was the exact same routine both times. In through the gate, into the pool chair, into the water, and out again. By the time Julian was done, he had 5 documented visits on camera, Helen's written witness statement, and a log going back 6 weeks. He called Richard Lawson on a Wednesday evening and laid everything out in one conversation. Richard was a brilliant civil litigation attorney based out of a prestigious firm on West Charleston Boulevard. Richard specialized in property rights and complex HOA disputes. He listened to the whole story without interrupting once. When Julian finished, Richard simply said, "Do not confront her yet. Treat the pool this Friday. Then let her come back one more time." Julian asked him what he meant by treating the pool. Richard carefully explained the plan to him. Julian was quiet for a moment. Then Julian asked, "Is that actually legal?" Richard assured him it was completely legal, completely harmless, and completely his choice as the property owner. Julian thought about it for exactly 4 seconds. Then he smiled and said, "Tell me what to get." He bought the specific chemical compound from a pool supply store on Flamingo Road on Thursday afternoon, keeping the printed receipt. He treated the pool Friday evening just before sunset. Then he set both cameras to their highest resolution, left the house Saturday morning at his usual time, and drove to a local coffee shop to wait. He did not have to wait very long. At 1:52 p.m., his phone buzzed loudly with a motion alert. He opened the camera app and watched Sylvia Vance walk through his pool gate for the 6th documented time. She set her bag down on his pool chair and lowered herself comfortably into the water without a single hesitation in the world. Julian simply ordered a second cup of coffee and patiently waited. Julian got home at 3:30. He did not rush at all. He pulled into his driveway, grabbed his coffee cup from the holder, and walked inside at a completely normal, relaxed pace. He reviewed the full camera footage from his kitchen counter before doing anything else. The footage was way better than he expected. Sylvia had spent an hour and 40 minutes in the water. It was longer than any previous visit, which meant much more exposure, more time, and considerably more of her sunscreen dissolving perfectly into the treated water all around her. She had climbed out at 3:11 p.m., toweled off, picked up her bag, and walked out through the gate. Julian watched the exact moment she passed the reflection of his sliding glass door. She stopped walking entirely. She stood completely still for about 4 seconds, staring down at her own arms. Then she looked at her legs. Then she looked back at her arms in pure horror. She started rubbing her forearm with the towel in quick, frantic strokes. It did absolutely nothing except confirm what she was already figuring out. Her skin had turned a bright, undeniable green. Julian watched the whole thing in high resolution from his kitchen and felt a deep, settled calm that he had not felt in weeks. He did not have to wait long for the screaming to start. Sylvia appeared at his front door at 4:23 p.m. He knew she was coming before she even knocked because the front camera picked her up halfway down the driveway. She was marching furiously. She had changed clothes, but the bright green tint was still clearly visible on her forearms, her collarbone, and the left side of her neck. She knocked twice, sharp and incredibly hard. Julian opened the door and looked at her with the exact same expression he had been practicing for 2 weeks. It was completely neutral, completely unbothered, giving her absolutely nothing to work with. Sylvia pointed angrily at her green arm. She told him she knew exactly what he had done to the pool and that she was going to sue him for every single dollar of medical expenses. She threatened him with lawsuits for emotional distress and property interference, shouting fast and loud. She had the full confidence of someone who hadn't realized this was the worst legal decision of her life. Julian let her finish every single arrogant word. Then he said quietly and without any drama at all, "You want to tell me why you were swimming in my private pool?" Sylvia opened her mouth to yell again. Julian casually held up his smartphone with the high-definition camera footage already pulled up. 6 visits, full footage, perfectly time-stamped, with her face completely visible in every single clip. He turned the screen toward her and let her watch herself illegally walk through his gate for the 6th time in 6 weeks. The color that instantly drained from Sylvia's face had nothing to do with chemicals. She stood frozen in his doorway with bright green arms. Her expression shifted very quickly from entitled outrage into something much quieter and much more frightened. She was entirely trapped. Julian told her that Richard Lawson at Lawson Legal on West Charleston Boulevard had already reviewed all the footage. He added that Helen Carmichael had submitted a signed witness statement. He casually mentioned that a formal complaint had been filed with the Clark County District Attorney's Office that very morning. The cease and desist would arrive at her door by Monday. Then he said, calm and final, "You should probably call a lawyer." He firmly closed the door in her face. Sylvia stood completely stunned on his porch, alone for a very long moment. Both cameras caught her standing there. Then she slowly walked back down the driveway with her green arms. A massive, closed legal case was behind her, and a very long, terrifying weekend was ahead. Sylvia did not call a lawyer fast enough. Richard Lawson filed the massive lawsuit on Monday morning, and the official filing was absolutely not quiet or polite. It listed numerous severe charges. It listed criminal trespassing across 6 documented incidents, extreme invasion of private property, blatant abuse of HOA authority, and fraudulent misrepresentation to intimidate a homeowner. Every single claim came attached to time-stamped camera footage, a signed witness statement, a chemical receipt, and a property deed. It made it categorically clear that Sylvia Vance had zero rights to that pool. Sylvia's desperate attorney tried to weakly argue that the pool chemical constituted deliberate harm. Richard quickly dismantled that ridiculous defense in a single devastating paragraph. The chemical was completely legal. The pool was strictly private. And his client had absolutely no legal obligation to consider the comfort of someone illegally trespassing on his property. The judge agreed without much deliberation at all. The court ruling came down incredibly hard. Sylvia was legally ordered to pay Julian's full attorney fees and massive damages for unauthorized entry. She also had to pay massive compensation for emotional distress and property interference. The staggering total came directly out of her personal bank account. Not the HOA fund, hers. The HOA board, who had completely ignored Julian's original complaints, was placed under a formal, strict review by the Nevada Real Estate Division for failure to address documented abuse. Arthur Higgins, Sylvia's most loyal board member, resigned the exact same afternoon the review was announced. He released a cowardly statement that threw Sylvia completely under the bus to save himself. Sylvia was humiliated and completely removed as HOA president within the week. She appealed absolutely nothing. She said nothing publicly. She simply disappeared from every community meeting and group chat. She never showed her face at any HOA function she had previously treated as her personal stage. Julian changed the pool gate code, pointed both cameras directly at it, and went swimming that Sunday. He swam in his beautiful, private pool in complete, absolute peace. If someone is secretly helping themselves to something that belongs to you and getting away with it, your story belongs in these comments. Drop it below. We read every single one. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing stories right here on Karen Unhinged.